In this video, I'm going to talk about two original D&D supplements that I absolutely adore. AC1, The Shady Dragon Inn, and AC4, The Marvelous Book of Magic. I'm going to start talking about AC1, The Shady Dragon Inn. Now, this is a supplement that I've previously talked a little bit about, but I wanted to make sure that I had an opportunity to dive in a little bit deeper. Simply put, this supplement is a book of generated NPCs. Now, this is something that both these books have in common because on the surface, you might think to yourself, well, in today's day and age where you can go to any number of websites and click generate NPC or generate magic item, why are these books useful? Well, I'm here to tell you why they're useful because these books are much better than a random NPC or magic item generator, and they have a lot more going on with them than a lot of these random generators can do. So the Shady Dragon Inn, like I said, is a book of NPCs, but there's a whole lot more about this book in here. To start, this book has a ton of cool images and reference guides. I'm going to open up the book here for you. So here is the Shady Dragon Inn by Carl Smith, published in 1983. And like I said, it's a book of NPCs. And so you can see here, there is a good picture. It's listed by class. So it starts with the fighters. But the cool thing about how it explains what each of these fighters are, because each of these fighters in the image is an NPC with all the details, is it has these really interesting reference images like this. And so you can see the shadow or silhouette of each fighter with a number. And so to identify a little bit more information about each fighter, you would go to that number and then read the information for that fighter. I think it's a very, very cool and well laid out resource. And it's actually my favorite resource to use for any number of reasons. And I'll cover that here at the end. Each of these NPCs included in this book, and there's a whole lot of them, they have the full stats for the NPC, so they have the attributes, saving throws, health, armor class, that type of thing. They have the full equipment list for each of these NPCs, and most importantly, and in my opinion fun, it has 1 to 2 paragraphs describing a little bit about this particular NPC. And these are very, very cool. So I'm going to read just 2 of them for you. There's, like I said, I've spent hours just reading this book because it is super fun, in my opinion, to find out more about these NPCs. Okay, so here is NPC number 52. This is a cleric, Ludovicus the Long. This is a level... Where's the level? Level 10 cleric, so pretty high level there. He's got spells through the 5th level, or 5th level of spells. Got a Warhammer +1, a whole bunch of other stuff. Anyways, Ludovicus is 37 and stands 6'7", that's where the name The Long comes from, and weighs 175 pounds. He is bald and has deep brown eyes. He wears crimson clerical robes and gilded armor. So right there you get a little bit of a sense of what type of cleric this NPC is. He will stay with the party and help them as long as it is profitable for him. Quote, "Gods help those who help themselves," unquote. He says seriously. He values gold highly. So that's a very short paragraph about Ludovicus, but it says so much about his character. And this is what I love about this book, because there is so much information in this book about these characters. There's 118 NPCs that have descriptions like this. And in just a moment, you can get all the stats, all the equipment, and you know how to run Ludovicus, including there's a lot of really good quotes in here that some of these NPCs say from time to time, and immediately you have an NPC that you can run. There's a very clear motivation and direction with Ludovicus that if you're running a game as a dungeon master, you don't have to come up with yourself, and a lot of these are very, very colorful characters. I'm going to read one more here. This is going to be Sam Smallsoul. This is a thief. So here is Sam Smallsoul. Again, this is a level 8 thief. He's got a +2 sword, dagger, sling, 20 pellets. Okay, he's also a hobbit, I believe, or halfling. Sam is 2 feet 11 inches, has curly brown hair, merry eyes, and a deadly sling, which he used once to kill a bear with 1 shot. Sam often guides parties. Once, a fighter who had seen a few halflings before made a comment about Sam on the footprints made by his little feet, as if it was children who led the party. This translated as Smallsoul. Sam is curious about magic users and elves. Although he does not dislike anyone, he thinks most dwarves are stuffy. Sam is afraid of eagles as one almost carried him away for its dinner 2 years ago. Sam will do anything he can to help his friends. And that's a little bit about Sam Smallsoul. Now, these descriptions, as you can tell, they're very, very great. They're very colorful. They give you a sense of what the character is like. But what I like most about them is they give you hooks that you can kind of latch onto and use to role play a little bit or guide motivation if you're running these characters as NPCs. For example, with Sam, and this is a recurring theme actually through Shady Dragon Inn, Sam has this bias against dwarves and curiosity about elves and magic users. And so immediately, if Sam is introduced to the party, you have a way and a purpose for Sam to begin interacting with the other characters, the other players. Additionally, Sam's afraid of eagles and also killed a bear once in one shot. So now Sam has different reactions with the environment that might be occurring around this adventure that's being run, and all of that is packed into just 1 or 2 paragraphs of information for these NPCs. So this is one of the reasons that I love about this book so much, is there's so much you can do with these little descriptive paragraphs, and it's the full package though, right? It's not just a descriptive paragraph, it's the stats, the equipment, and everything. Now that's not all that's in the book here. There's also a fun section at the end, which is interesting. It is a special characters section. There you go, you can see them. I think at one point TSR was trying to trademark a number of characters, and that's what this section is. Each of these characters have names like Paralay the elf, or Elkhorn the dwarf, Strongheart the fighter. Each of these names are trademarked, and they explain basically what these characters are all about, but then also how they fit into the story that I think TSR was trying to run at the time. There's also their evil counterparts here in trademarked characters like Foxfingers the elf, or I'm sorry, the thief, and Warduke the fighter. So there's kind of a blast to the past with some of the trademarked attempts at story and characters that TSR was doing. There's also at the very end a party creator, so you can just pull, it gives you which NPCs to use if you're trying to pull a party together, and that is very useful if you're trying to use it quickly. The last thing I want to call out for this resource is the inn itself. This is actually has been very, very useful to me. The cover actually unfolds, and you get an inn. So you get the first level and the second level of the inn in a battle mat or something like that. So you can actually have this out on your table if you want to use it, or if you just want to use it as a reference, you can use that as a dungeon master. So it's a very, very wonderful resource. Now, what do I use this resource for? I use this resource for a lot of things. The first thing and most frequent thing that I use this resource for is using the NPCs. If I need an NPC quickly, I will often go to this resource and pull up an NPC and maybe just go to a random page and start reading something in there about the NPC. It works best when I know the NPC is potentially going to be a big deal. So it might be like a lone stranger the characters meet on a road, or it might be somebody who swoops in to save the day, or a potential nemesis for the characters, or even just an interaction at a tavern or in a market square that I want to go somewhere. That's where I use these characters for. I generally wouldn't use these characters for like a random shopkeeper that the characters are trying to buy something from. Rather, I would use these characters for something that has a little bit more depth or needs a little bit more robust of an encounter behind it. But that's not all I've used this accessory for. I also have used this as an inn, the cliche start where, your characters are all at an inn, they say hi, and then a brawl starts. That's really fun, especially since the inn map is here. And there's a few characters, NPCs in here like Boris Bonesnapper that fit very well in a tavern brawl type situation. And then finally, I've used the NPCs from here as pre-made characters, especially if you're running an OSR game for people who are new to OSR. Because not only are all of the stats included, there's usually some sort of like magic item or interesting item that the characters are carrying, but they also have the descriptive paragraph. So if you're a new player, new to OSR or new to old school D&D, and you're not quite sure what you're doing, but you're given the level 3 character Boris Bonesnapper, and you read that Boris Bonesnapper once broke both man's arms, when someone was trying to split treasure with him, and then Boris said, take whatever treasure you want. That tells you a little bit about how strong-armed Boris Bonesnapper is, and how he kind of is like, might makes right, and, you know, that type of thing. It's very easy to begin role-playing with these descriptive paragraphs. So that is AC1, the Shady Dragon Inn. That's how I use it, and I think if you have an opportunity to check this out, to grab it, I would definitely do so, because it is probably my favorite accessory from these old-school D&D modules. The other book and accessory I wanted to talk about was AC4, The Marvelous Book of Magic. Now, AC1 was by Carl Smith. The Marvelous Book of Magic is by Frank Mentzer and Gary Gygax, and was published 2 years later in 1985. Now, the first thing I want to note is that, again, this is just a book of magic items, right? And on the surface, you might think, well, I can go to a random magic item generator and just click generate and get an item. How is this book different? Well, this book is different in a lot of really good ways, and it's so much more than just a magic item generator. First, I'd like to point out that this book is beautiful. The formatting is on point, especially when you compare it to like the original Dungeon Master's Guide and stuff. It's got this really nice backdrop here to the pages. Let's go a few pages. All of the magic items are alphabetized, and when you look at the pages, it's got this really fun writing, and there's not a ton of art in it, but the art is very, very thematic for the book, and very, very cool. So the formatting is great. The art is great, and it's really a joy to read through just because of how it's set up. The other cool thing about this book, and there's many, I guess, another cool thing about this book is the crazy magic items in here. I'm going to go through the table of contents and just say a few different types of magic items. You have your normal stuff like an amulet, or like a bell, or a candle, or things like that. Those might be regular magic items that you would expect to see. There are other magic items like an armchair, like a bellows or a bagpipe, like a canoe, like an earring, like an egg, like a muzzle, like like a wheel, like a window. So there's some insane, absolutely crazy magic items in here that you would not expect to see in a Dungeons and Dragons game, and it goes way beyond what I think an online magic item generator could do for you. My favorite thing, though, about this book is how they present these magic items. Now, I've been playing Dungeon Crawl Classics, or DCC, for a few years, and one of the keynotes of DCC is that each magic item needs to be or should be unique. DCC was introduced at a time when Dungeons and Dragons moved away from unique magic items and went towards you find a sword +1, or you find a dagger +2, where magic items kind of lost their wonder and rather just become extra numbers that you could add to your character sheet. So DCC, what they tried to do, Dungeon Crawl Classics again, is they tried to take a look at magic items and say, hey, magic items should be wondrous, they should be unique, they should be exciting, so we're going to make each of them unique and not just a mechanical advantage for the characters. And that, I think, is based off of what they did in this book. Every single magic item in this book is unique. A lot of them are very number light. Some of them don't even have numbers. And every single one of these goes well beyond how a character or an environment is going to be influenced by the magic item, especially when you think about it numerically. It goes well beyond there. So I'm going to go through and read just two of these, although the first time I got this book, I sat down and read it cover to cover. It was amazing. So page 14 is one of my favorites, and this is the barrel section, and one of the magical barrels you can find is a barrel of monkeys. There's a really great illustration here that I'll show you. So I'll read this out loud. A barrel is a cylindrical container constructed of wooden vertical slats, or staves, held together by circular metal bands, or hoops. It has flat parallel ends. Normally the base is mounted permanently and the top removable. Both base and top may be permanent if one or more holes are cut in the barrel and sealed with plugs or bungs. A standard barrel holds 31.5 gallons or 119.2 liters of liquid, or 1,960 I actually don't know what that means. Something of solid materials, such as flour or treasure, and weighs 1,000, again, don't know what that means when empty. Okay, so that's just a description of a barrel. They actually do that a lot in here. I'm not quite sure why they felt the need to spend a paragraph or two explaining very common items, but there's a lot of useful information in there if that's the type of player or dungeon master you are. Then it says to determine the type of barrel found, roll 1d4. So result number 2 is barrel of monkeys. When this barrel is examined, the victim looking inside it must make a saving throw versus spells or be polymorphed into a white ape. Then it gives the where you can find the stats for a white ape. In addition, regardless of the results of the saving throw, one white ape appears within the barrel, leaps out, and attacks anybody nearby. Another white ape appears each turn thereafter until 100 of the creatures have been created or until a remove curse spell has been applied. The barrel loses all its magical powers if moved by hand, but may be transported by the use of telekinesis. Wow! So this does two things. Number one, this tells you the type of magic items that this book is about. These are not small magic items. These are big magic items that have big consequences. The second thing this tells us is that there's some zany magical items in here. Obviously, a barrel of monkeys is tongue-in-cheek to the toy barrel of monkeys, but it takes the idea and puts it in D&D terms and then, dials it up to 11. It's not just a barrel of monkeys. It's a barrel of monkeys that could polymorph a character and will then send 100 white apes after your party if you do not have a way to deal with it right now. Super crazy. All right, I'm going to go to one more, page 62 here. And this is a spoon, specifically the birth spoon. Excuse me. So the spoon section says, magical spoons may be found nearly anywhere. They may be small or large, wood or metal, plain or decorated. I'm surprised in that introduction paragraph to spoons, they did not give us stats on the depth of the hollow of the spoon or the possible lengths of spoon, as that's what they do in most of these other sections. For example, right next to that, there's a section on stairs which tells you generally how wide or long stairs might be, or even the thickness of each stair. Like, it's insane. Anyways, onto the birth spoon. This silver spoon functions only when placed in the mouth of a baby not more than 1 day old. It may be immediately removed, but the spoon must be kept in the dwelling where the babe was born. Sometimes in the first year of life, the lucky babe inherits from a long-lost, forgotten relative a fortune of at least 1,000 gold pieces, but not more than 50,000 gold pieces. If the spoon is stolen, a curse of bad luck falls upon the baby, and all money and items owned are lost. That's a crazy magic item. There is nothing mechanic about that magic item. The baby doesn't grow up with +1 strength or +1 dexterity. There's no mechanical advantage. Rather, this is a crazy story hook for at least a full session, if not an entire campaign. And that brings me to what I like to use this book for. There's three things. The first one is I like to read it. This is a fun book to read. Some of the ideas are crazy. Number two, this book is very inspirational. It is easy to get really good ideas from this book for a play session or something like that. But the most important or the best thing I can use this book for, and I think the best thing it should be used for, is as campaign or story hooks within the story. Take that birth spoon, for example. Okay, so the characters are maybe they have a relative who was just born, or maybe somehow they get interwoven with a family that has a baby that's just born. Now imagine that the family of this baby that's just born has a birth spoon, so they use it, right? They use it, put the spoon in the baby's mouth. Oh, good fortune's coming in a year. And 1,000 gold pieces is a lot of gold pieces. Up to 50,000 gold pieces, that's a lot of gold pieces, right? But this is a very powerful magic item, right? Other people are going to want it. So now maybe the characters have to stop other people, stop some thieves or something from stealing the magic item. Or maybe we go one step further and we say maybe there is a rich relative who doesn't like this family and learns of the birth spoon and now thinks, hey, I'm the only person that this baby can inherit money from, which means I'm going to magically die because of this magical spoon, which means the baby is going to inherit my wealth, and I don't want that to happen. So now this rich person is sending assassins and thieves into this household to try and steal this spoon so that this rich person can save their money, and so that the rich person doesn't die due to the magic of the spoon, which would allow the baby to inherit the item. So this item, the birth spoon, and then so many others in this book of marvelous magic, it doesn't have a total of how many there are, but there's a lot of items here. They are so good at setting up either campaign level storylines or session level storylines. It's absolutely crazy the ideas you can get from this, and it is they're all unique. It's so cool because they're all unique. Very few are actually mechanical in nature, and none of them are strictly mechanical in nature, which makes this book wonderful. I do want to point out one small thing about this. Like the Barrel of Monkeys, this is something that happened in early D&D a lot, where there were trap encounters, or traps in general, or trap magic items, where if the players don't know how to deal with it, or don't have the power to deal with it, or don't deal with it immediately, it will ruin a full character, or potentially even ruin the campaign. So you do want to be careful when using this, and consider some of the implications of using some of these magic items, because quite frankly, some of them are a little nasty, and would be fun for the dungeon master maybe, but not fun for the play group unless you play a very specific style of play. So keep that in mind as you're reading through this. But again, it's a wonderful resource. So that's all I have to talk about today. I want to again let you know that both of these accessories, this is AC1, the Shady Dragon Inn, and AC4, the Book of Marvelous Magic, are definitely worth your time if you have a chance to take a look or get your hands on them. And I highly suggest them even in the day of online random generators. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next video.